Welcome and thank you for joining us during your lunch break, no doubt, for this press conference following the Security and Defence VTC of this morning. We have just released the statement on these topics, but first I propose we listen to the President of the European Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we discussed security and defence. We want to act more strategically to defend our interests and to promote our values. And we need to increase our ability to act autonomously and strengthen our cooperation with our partners. We are committed to cooperating closely with NATO. A stronger Europe makes a stronger NATO. We exchanged views with Secretary General Stoltenberg about working together to improve our collective security and the challenges ahead. We also look forward to cooperating with the new US administration on a strong transatlantic agenda, including a close dialogue on security and defence. Last week, President Biden said, "America is back." We in Europe are ready to do our part to be a strong and reliable partner, not only to the US, but to all our partners like the UN and regional partners. We want to deepen security and defence cooperation among member states. We want to increase defence investment, and we want to enhance civilian and military capabilities and operational readiness. And as cyber threats increase, we must reinforce our cyber resilience and improve our cyber security. In addition, we will step up our cooperation to combat hybrid threats and disinformation. In this context, the High Representative gave an update on a strategic compass that will guide our efforts in security and defence, and we intend to adopt this by March 2022. We will continue to review security and defence on a regular basis at the level of the European Council. Nous avons eu aussi l'occasion de discuter le partenariat méridional sur le plan stratégique et sur le plan politique. Ce partenariat est basé sur une histoire commune et sur une géographie qui l'est tout autant. We have a number of key priorities: strengthen the resilience of our economies and societies, preserve our collective security, tackle the challenge of mobility and migration, and offer prospects to young people on both sides of the Mediterranean. And this should be based on an upgraded and intensified political dialogue across the Mediterranean. Finally, we look forward to the implementation of the joint communication from the Commission and High Representative. Sur ce partenariat méridional, le débat que nous avons eu ce matin donne un nouvel horizon, une nouvelle ambition sur le plan du dialogue politique, sur le plan de la coopération économique, inspirée par nos valeurs et souhaitant, là aussi, mettre en évidence nos intérêts stratégiques. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Indeed, a good EU-NATO cooperation remains a top priority for the Commission. We had an excellent exchange with Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, and indeed he was pointing out at the very different threats and challenges we are facing, and in some cases we address these challenges in NATO. You know all the theaters NATO is in at the moment being, but there are also scenarios where NATO is not engaged, but where the European Union is called upon. So if you take, for example, the EU missions or the UN missions, and the European Union needs to be capable to do that. Therefore, Europe needs to develop its own capabilities, thus stop the fragmentation we have at the moment being, if we look at our military capabilities, and develop interoperable systems in the European Union. That is why we have set up the first building blocks of the European Defence Union. It is the PESCO, the Permanent Structured Cooperation. PESCO is supported by the new 8 billion euros European Defence Fund, and it will help us to develop military capabilities as Europeans together. We have the industry, we have the knowledge. What we need is to put this innovation and these talents at the service of common European capabilities. This will reduce fragmentation and it will enhance interoperability. Earlier this week, we presented an action plan on the third component that is important here, and these are the synergies between civil industries, defense industries, and space industries. By synergies, we mean that EU funding for research and development in defense and space can have concrete civil applications. One example is the Eurodrone. We will identify critical technologies across defense, space, and the civil industries. We will then develop roadmaps from inception to application using available EU funding. And finally, we will apply these technologies to very concrete projects. This week, we launched 3 flagship projects to test this approach. It's the drone technologies, a new space communication system, and space traffic management. So, in short, the cornerstone is PESCO, enabled by the European Defence Fund, and the necessary coordination within the European Union takes place through the so-called CARD planning process, and it's very compatible with the NATO planning process itself. A few words on the southern neighbourhood. Indeed, the Mediterranean region has a strategic importance for the European Union. Both our security and stability are intertwined. As we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Barcelona process this month, we decided to renew our partnership with southern neighbourhood countries. First, of course, in fighting this pandemic together. This is why we have mobilized over 2.3 billion euros in support, 1 billion for health and 1.3 billion for economic recovery. But the pandemic has also exacerbated difficulties in the region, like economic hardship or lack of perspective for young people. These challenges were there before, without any doubt, and they need to be addressed in a more structural way. And this is my second point. Our renewed partnership includes an economic and investment plan for the southern neighbourhood. It aims to support long-term socio-economic recovery and to accompany sustainable and digital development in the region. Under this plan, the Commission proposes to mobilize up to 7 billion euros. It is included in the so-called NDICI, the Neighbourhood and Development and International Cooperation Instrument. It's a long name for an abbreviation that not everybody knows, the NDICI. In turn, this instrument would help mobilize private and public investment worth up to 30 billion euros. And beyond these two elements, we will, of course, continue to engage with our partners across all the areas where we share common challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll first take a question of Christian Spielmann, the AFP. Bonjour. Allumez votre volume, votre son. Très bien. Désolé, Christian, ça ne marche pas. I will take another question.
Non, ça marche là.
Ah,
c'est
maintenant
bon.
ça marche. OK.
Ça marche ou ça marche pas?
Ça marche.
Ça marche.
Ça fonctionne.
Ok. Très bien. Ma première question est pour vous, Monsieur Michel. Je voudrais savoir, à l'issue de ce débat, comment est-ce que l'Union européenne va arriver à concilier sa volonté d'autonomie en matière de défense et de sécurité et son extrême dépendance vis-à-vis de l'OTAN. Il y a un certain nombre de pays qui ne voient, qui ne jurent, qui ne parlent que par l'OTAN, la protection de l'OTAN, et qui rejettent complètement toute idée d'autonomie et de défense. Et ma seconde question est pour vous, Madame von der Leyen. Est-ce que, au niveau de la Commission européenne, vous avez fait un état des dépendances qu'a l'Union européenne pour effectivement assurer son indépendance technologique. Je voulais savoir, par exemple, sur les microprocesseurs, sur les terres rares, les matériaux rares. Nous dépendons absolument de nos importations, de nos achats des pays comme la Chine. Et donc, je voudrais savoir si un jour on arrivera à se sortir de cette dépendance et avoir effectivement l'autonomie que l'on souhaite à tous les niveaux. Merci.
Mais ce débat ce matin est extrêmement utile. D'abord la première partie, l'échange de vues avec le secrétaire général de l'OTAN, et ensuite le débat entre nous, les 27 leaders européens, avec la Commission et le haut représentant, très très utile parce que ce débat a montré de manière très très nette qu'il y a une double démarche, et tout à fait fondamentale. D'une part, il y a la volonté qui est partagée très largement de renforcer la capacité de l'Union européenne d'agir d'une manière autonome, mais de le faire en prenant en considération le souhait d'être un acteur engagé, loyal, fiable dans le cadre de nos partenariats, dans le cadre de nos partenariats stratégiques, avec l'OTAN bien entendu. Et il est certain, c'était vraiment une ligne directrice dans le cadre de nos débats, qu'une Union européenne plus forte, une Union européenne plus robuste, cela rend l'OTAN plus fort, et l'OTAN plus fort et plus robuste, ça rend l'Union européenne plus forte et plus solide. Nous partageons des intérêts communs, la volonté de garantir plus de stabilité et de prévisibilité dans notre voisinage, la volonté d'être engagé pour être plus résilient, plus réactif aussi quand c'est nécessaire pour faire face aux nouvelles menaces auxquelles nous sommes confrontés, les cybermenaces, les menaces hybrides, les désinformations. La volonté aussi, cela a été mentionné, d'être plus engagé pour avoir une base industrielle et technologie plus solide et développer plus de synergie entre l'agenda digital, l'agenda spatial et les questions de défense. Et donc, le concept clé, c'est la complémentarité. Nous souhaitons effectivement être totalement engagés, à la fois pour déployer davantage d'ambitions stratégiques, pour développer une capacité d'autonomie, mais cette capacité d'autonomie, elle est totalement complémentaire, totalement intégrée dans notre souhait de travailler avec nos partenaires. Et il est certain que la nouvelle administration Biden offre une opportunité de renforcer cette dynamique dans différents domaines, aussi sur les questions de sécurité et de défense.
Yes, thank you for the question with the question on dependency on supply chains and raw material and how we address it. So there are three different strands, I'd say, in the very short term, in the medium, and in the long term, how we address indeed the topic of supply chains and dependency. And this pandemic revealed a lot of over-dependencies on critical supply chains. Therefore, as you know, we have established a task force under the lead of Thierry Breton to have an ad hoc look at, for example, the supply chains and the critical raw materials we need to produce vaccines in the European Union at the scale that is necessary, so that immediately there is a response. There's a second, more structured approach, that is the HERA incubator. We have launched a week ago. That looks in a very systematic, strategic manner at where are over-dependencies, how can we reduce them, how can we onshore more production of raw material that is necessary. The typical example are the lipids for the mRNA, for example. Or how can we diversify supply chains so that we are not over-dependent on a single supplier. But there is also then the long-term issue, and you mentioned the rare earth, for example. And here, over time, the solution will only be to move more and more into a circular economy. This is not only good for the planet, it is not only a strong element in the fight against climate change, but it also reduces the dependency, for example, on rare earth, if you are in a process where you are able to reuse them.
Thank you. We're going to turn to Ansgar Haase from DPA now. Ansgar?
I have a quick question on the work on the strategic compass. What should the European Union aim for, in your opinion? Should the European Union be able to act autonomously from the United States, or is it enough if the EU becomes more autonomous? Thank you.
No, I would like to repeat that, in our opinion, it's important for us as European Union to be stronger, to be more robust, and to have also a stronger cooperation among the member states on defence. For example, in order to avoid this current situation of big fragmentation when it comes to defence, and that's why we use important tools. For example, the European Defence Fund is an important decision that we have taken the recent weeks. This is my first point. But at the same time, we think that if we are stronger as European Union, it's good for NATO. It's good for the transatlantic partnership, because a strong partnership requires strong partners. And this is this double approach, and this current approach that we want to develop. And this debate today was really interesting and useful, because it was a demonstration that we have all a common interest for a stronger European Union, able to act more autonomously, and at the same time, we want to be able to act autonomously, taking into consideration the importance of all our strategic partnerships. The Transatlantic Alliance, point one, NATO, which is a very important international organization in order to guarantee the strong ties between North America and Europe, but also the United Nations and some regional organizations.
Yes, indeed, the strategic compass that will be developed, we just started the work on the strategic compass, will look at, of course, the alliances and the elements where Europe has to become stronger. I think in answering the first question on the supply chains, for example, it was a good example to show that it's not only on military capabilities, but it's a way broader approach that we chose. It is, of course, necessary that we have a certain open strategic autonomy in economic topics. If we, as we had Jens Stoltenberg today as a speaker, narrow it in on the military capabilities, I always think that we have to keep in mind that, yes, the many, I think it's 22 member states are acting within NATO, and NATO is very important for the European security. But the European Union as a whole has more tasks for stabilization and security than the tasks within NATO. And for that, we have to be prepared. And I'm deeply convinced that one of our main weaknesses is the fragmentation of the different military systems. They are not interoperable. So at way too high costs and with less efficiency, we are working in that field. So one aim is, with the strategic autonomy, to have a common approach to the military capabilities we share among the European Union, to develop them together. So you do not have only the interoperability, but you also can share resources from one member state to the next, whether it's human resources or it's capabilities in the different military fields, where you can operate them together and therefore have a common approach to face challenges. And to get better at that, we have established the process where we have common European projects in the PESCO. We have a European planning process with CARD that enables us to move forward in this issue.
Thank you. I'll take a last question from Athanasios. Hello.
Thanks very much. Hi, I hope you can hear me. Thanks very much for the opportunity. The Greek public, when it hears about security and defense, rightfully understands the East and Turkey. So how does Turkey, which is also a NATO member, fall into the scheme of the strategic and security and defense enhancement of the European Union and the views we have presented? And secondly, you also have a standing security hazard in the Eastern Mediterranean with the divided Republic of Cyprus. Now, recently, the UN Secretary General announced that there will be a 5+1 party summit for the Cyprus issue. There, the European Union is going to be an observer. So my question is, given all that you have decided today, is that enough? Be just an observer in that summit? Thanks.
Thank you. You know that we intend to have again in March a strategic debate on the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean and the relationship between the EU and Turkey. And we will prepare this debate the next days, the next weeks. And of course, you know that Turkey is member of NATO. This is an important element. At the same time, it's not a secret that the last months we had some difficulties with Turkey. But our goal, taking into consideration the last conclusions, the last decisions that we have taken all together at the European level, is to have again this debate in March and to take again decisions together on this topic in March. This is my first point. About the UN process, you are right that in the past the European Union has played a role as observer, and we are still observer in this 5+1 process regarding the Cyprus settlement. And we will be very committed as European Union, because we think indeed that we can play a positive role, a fruitful role, in order to support all the positive efforts, in order to have more progress in the region. What do we want for the region? We want more stability, we want more predictability. We know that there are some difficulties, some disputes, and we will try to do our best in order to protect the European interest, to protect also the interest of our member states, and also to give more stability and more predictability in this important region for us.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Madam President, for this press conference. Thanks for joining us, and